whenever you're ready.
This is Mr. Al Zentko of near Darlington, Indiana, who's a Korean War veteran. Al, where were you born?
I was born in close to a small town in Carbon, Indiana, which is right off 59 on the Clay-Park County line. We were the farthest point in Park County. Consequently, no one ever plowed our roads or anything. We never got anything. We was the farthest point away.
Al, where were you June 25th, 1950? That was a Sunday.
Well, I suppose I was home. I heard about the invasion of South Korea. I suppose on the radio. I was a member of the reserves, and I think we were notified of this, but it didn't worry me any because we were inactive reserves, and as far as I knew, it wouldn't affect us anyway.
What was your rank in the reserves?
I was a corporal.
A corporal. When were you activated?
Just practically a few days after the war started. It wasn't within 2 months I was in Korea. That was how quickly we were activated.
Where did you report when you were activated?
Down to Fort Hood, Texas.
Fort Hood, Texas. Were you armored?
Yeah, I was armored, but they sent me down for a 5-day refresher course in artillery. And that was the last I ever saw of any artillery after I left Fort Hood, Texas.
And where was your point of embarkation for Korea?
Well, we left out of Stoneman at San Francisco.
Did you go by ship or by plane?
No, I went by ship.
By ship.
Mm-hmm.
And where did you land in Korea?
We landed up on, what was the name of that? But it was below Hungnam. What was the name of that?
Incheon?
No, not Incheon. That was on the other side.
Gangneung? No.
No. For the life of me, it was a short name. For the life of me, I can't think of the name of that. If you hadn't asked me, I could have told you.
Munsan?
Wonsan.
Wonsan.
Wonsan, yeah.
And what outfit were you assigned to?
At the time that I landed in Wonsan, I was assigned to an artillery unit. However, they put us on a train, and we headed, I think, east and north. The train was full of troops, and every once in a while we would stop and troops would get off, or they'd call out units and everything like that, and guys would get off. Eventually we ended up as far as the train would go. Now this is over a period of like a day and a half, and we come to a halt, and they said, "That's it, everybody get out." And there was a couple, 3 trucks with 3rd Division markings on it. And they told us to load up on those trucks, and I still thought I still had orders for an artillery unit. However, I ended up being assigned to G Company, which is an infantry unit of the 7th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Division.
And were you in North Korea when you got off the train?
Mm-hmm.
And tell us of your experiences. Were you wounded while you were in Korea?
I had 3 slight wounds while I was in Korea at different times. None serious enough to be evacuated or anything. It was kind of Band-Aid type stuff. Korea, when I first got there, it wasn't so cold. In fact, it was pretty nice. If you had to live outside and everything, it really wasn't bad. But it was within a couple of weeks, it turned bitter cold. And we never had the winter clothes. And I've never forgot, I always remember my dad used to talk about when he was growing up, he had an aunt that had a boarding house, and the bums would come in off of the trains, and they'd always hunt newspapers so they could wrap it around them, keep them from freezing. And I never forgot that. When I got to Korea, and we just were literally freezing to death, and I found this old wrapping paper and stuff like that and wrapped it around myself and tried to encourage some of the others. Some of the guys wouldn't do it, but I did, and I've always credited that with being how I survived Korea.
Were you in North Korea when the Chinese jumped us?
Yeah. I was up at somewhat below the Chosin Reservoir. It was within sight, but I wasn't actually at the reservoir. We came out, basically, we fell in behind the Marines and the like, and were the actual rear guard for the Marines.
Did you have heavy casualties in your company?
We had terrific casualties. I kept a record, and one of the things that we had when I was in G Company was we had so many Koreans. We didn't have a whole lot of American soldiers. And when I reported to G Company, Captain K, he was a lieutenant at that time, later to become captain, was a great officer. And he's looking at my records, and he says, "Well, I see here that you're a machine gunner." And I said, "Where's it say that?" He said, "Right here in your records." And I said, "I'd fired a machine gun one time, you know, with the..." And I told him, I said, "Oh no," I said, I'd also reminded him that I was to be assigned to the artillery, and he gave me to understand that as a G Company man, I was as close to the artillery as I'd ever get. And he was a great officer, though. He was later killed. He was a great officer. He was an exceptional officer.
What was your rank at this time?
I was still corporal.
Still corporal.
Yeah. So he assigned me as a machine gun squad leader, and I had no idea what to do with that thing. But we learned pretty quick. In Korea, it was not.
I can imagine.
I also weighed 118 pounds, and he told me, of course, Korea, was up one hill and down another, and he told me that as soon as he could get some big guys, that he'd take me off of that machine gun and give it to somebody else that could hump it easier. But I had that machine gun section for, I don't know, North Korea, and then we went back down south, and then we started getting some replacements, and he took me off the gun.
Where were you when you went back down south? What town?
We went back down to Pusan.
Pusan. You were involved at the fight with the Pusan perimeter.
No, that had already happened.
That had already happened.
But to get back to North Korea, we were the rear guard, and one of the best Christmases, well, the only good Christmas I've ever had, the best Christmas I ever had in my life was we were evacuated on Christmas Eve of 1950. And, you know, it was disheartening to be looking over your shoulder and see all those ships leaving all the time. And they said we was going to go, but it just made you think a little bit whether or not they was going to save one for you. But they did, and we left on Christmas Eve of 1950. We hadn't had a shower or a change of clothes in about 6 weeks. We'd been living outside. We got on that ship. Of course, it was cold, you know, but when we got on that ship, we started thawing out. And it wasn't long till that ship smelled like a pig boat, you know. And those sailors, boy, they got us clean clothes and hosed us down and fed us and everything. It was like sheer heaven. After that, we had a bunk to sleep in, and you know, I think I slept for 24 hours. But we was on that ship, I think, for about 3 days, and ended up back in Pusan. We had kind of a retraining period. We was getting a lot of replacements and the like. One of the things that did happen, we had, and I don't remember the number now, but we had a few guys that was in G Company that were under 18, and they had to send them back to Japan because you're not allowed to have, not allowed to be in combat zone under 18.
That's interesting.
We took, I think we lost about 6, but while we were back there, after we got down to South Korea, they pulled out all the Koreans and formed them up into their own units, and we got then Americans, soldiers, GIs, to fill in the blanks in.
Where'd you go after you were in Busan and your company was brought back to strength? What was your next assignment?
I don't remember the exact places. We just went north. We went up. One of the first things that we done was they moved us up below the Han River, below Incheon, and they come around wanting volunteers. It was bitter cold, you know. It was see the cold was not just in North Korea. It was bitter cold in South Korea too.
I remember.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. There's anybody that was in Korea, you never forgot the cold or the smell or the heat. There's the three, or the wet or the dry. It didn't make any difference. Anyway, they asked for volunteers to, they was forming up a ranger outfit of volunteers. You had to volunteer for it, and what the idea was that you would cross the river, the Han River, and get in the Chinese position, take prisoners, see. So, as a reward, they had a little cluster of mud huts back there someplace that we was going to be able to stay in those mud huts when we weren't actually crossing the river. Well, it sounded good to me, you know, because we was out in the cold, you know, and I thought anything to get warm, you know. So I volunteered, and this unit, it was only about 3 weeks, but I volunteered along with some other guys, and on those real dark, cold nights when there was no moon or anything, cloudy nights, why we'd cross the river in pontoon boats and get up in the Chinese. But I was a radio man. That was the only spot they had open. I still remember my call sign. I was artist. And I use that in my internet messages and all that kind of stuff. I never forgot that. And the company CP was blonde. And anyway, I was in that unit for about 3 weeks, and evidently when they finally had the information they wanted, why they just disbanded it and sent us all back to G Company. Then from then on, we was every operation that they had, you know, the Iron Triangle, Chorwan, Daegu, we were sent over to Yang Yang one time to bail out the 1st Cav Division to help them out. While I was over there, my squad captured a Russian machine gun. Big old thing, you know, stood way up. I don't know how they survived with around that big thing sitting there on a tripod. And it was a prize. I got a R&R in Japan over that. The colonel, he happened to come by right after we'd got that and want to know what happened. And I told him it was really not too big a deal, but to hear us tell it, it was really a you know, but he said, send that man back to Japan on an R&R. So
that meant 5 days in Japan,
yeah,
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I could spin yarns about stuff that we done in Korea, you know, about that particular trip, but it'd take forever. But you know, eventually the weather, it warmed up, but then it started raining then. Korea was something else. It was.
When did you return to the zone of interior?
I left around the 1st of October.
1951?
Mm-hmm. I had, I think the 3rd Infantry Division, we were in every campaign that they had. I ended up with 4 battle stars. But you know, I just didn't worry about stuff in Korea. I've thought about it and thought about it, how lucky I was. Because G Company, we had horrendous casualties, always. And I've got Collier's magazine at home that Hard Brody came up to G Company one time, and he was a combat artist. I don't know if you remember Hard Brody or not, but he was a combat artist, and they sent him up to G Company, and he was on an operation with us I don't know, like 2 or 3 days, and he drew us, and you know, gave a running account of the operation that we were on and everything. I still have that Collier's at home.
What was your most scary experience?
I don't know. I don't know. It would be hard to say. I know one of the most memorable experience was that I was sent out on an outpost one time, and it was sometime in late spring, and I don't know, they just forgot about me, I guess, and we run out of water and rations and everything, and so I thought, you know, we got to do something. And I'd never seen any action, but there was a lot of firing around us. You know how Korea was, you know, there's a mountain here, and there's another one here, and there's one there, and there's a ravine there, and, you know, it was, you could be kind of isolated there, and the whole thing could go around you, and you wouldn't even know it. And that's kind of what happened on that. I was there about a week, and finally I decided that, you know, I had to do something, so I pulled my squad, and we go down to the bottom of the hill. There's a real thick growth of trees, pine trees and the like, And we got down to the bottom of the hill, and there was a field kitchen set up, and it was a like a limey outfit, because they spoke English or limey, you know, Australian or something like that. See, I don't know, and they had this field kitchen set up, and of course we was hungry, and it just smelled so good. And this mess sergeant asked me, he said, "Are you hungry?" I said, "Yeah." I'll never forget that. And he told me, he said, "Oh, we got some meatballs. Is that good enough?" I said, "Yeah." We sit there and put those meatballs in her field jacket and pockets and everything. Went on down the road, you know, eating those meatballs like popcorn. But when I look back, see, he was set up waiting on his unit. See, he wasn't waiting for us. And he asked me, he said, "Want to know if there was any other outfits up there?" And I told him I didn't see any. I didn't know. But he had tears running down his eyes. I'll never forget that.
When you got home, what was your rank?
I was sergeant.
Sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And were you married while
Yeah.
you were in service?
Yeah, I was married. Actually, I had two kids. And I had actually World War II ended while I was taking basic training. So I was actually a World War II veteran too. And I went to Japan on as a served occupation duty over there.
How long were you in during World War II?
About 20 months.
20 months.
Something like that. Mm-hmm.
Where were you stationed in Japan?
In Yokohama.
Yokohama.
Mm-hmm. I was in an engineer outfit, and I was in charge of a engineer warehouse there.
Looking back, Al, how do you regard your 2 times in service?
Well, I wouldn't. I'd do it again. I really would. There was days that I wondered why, but I don't know. I just could not wait to go, and I never. Even though, you know, we were in an infantry unit and we had horrendous casualties all the time, I just never really thought that I wouldn't come home. I had 2 kids, and, you know, I just had to come home. There was, and I don't know, we talk about it. In fact, I just come back from the Chosen Few reunion, and we always talk about it. How's come one lives and the other doesn't? And we've never figured it out, but we kind of feel like that if you had to really want to, survive. That was the only way that you would survive.
I think God might have been looking after you too.
Yeah. It makes me wonder sometimes, why me and not this guy? I mean, you know, I don't know. It's hard to figure out. But looking back, I wouldn't, I'm just tickled to death I had the opportunity. It makes you look at yourself pretty deep if you're in those kind of situations, you know.
That's very interesting, Al Zentko. What outfit were you with in Japan? Was it 1st Cav?
No, it was a 431st Engineer Construction Battalion. But we didn't do any actual construction. It was just that there was so much stuff coming in from the ships. You know, they had all these ships loaded with invasion supplies. They had to do something with them. And I just happened to end up in charge of it was a great big warehouse, cement type warehouse. And we had everything in that thing. Every day there was a ship pulled in there and was unloaded, and nails and stuff like that. Just whatever you would find, you know. We even had an airplane, and just anything. Of course, this was a great job too, you know, because ships had come in, and you could always go over and get a cup of coffee and you know a sandwich. You know, they always had stuff to.
Good chow.
Yeah, good chow. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Al Zentko, for coming in. We appreciate your comments, and thank you for serving our country.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I thank you very much. I was going to even talk to my friend, Jim. I talked to him a little bit last night.
Tell him we'd like to interview him.
Yeah, I'll tell him.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure being here.
I'll tell you, I felt the same way. I wondered how come I came home let free, and what was I supposed to do the rest of my life.
I honestly think, I've always said this, and I always felt this. I had 2 little girls, and I just don't know how they would have managed, my wife would have managed without me. And you know, when we went to Korea, we stopped in Japan there for a few days. I don't remember now.
Sasebo, probably.
Yeah. We was able to look at a catalog for Christmas gifts, you know, and I sent the girls dolls or something, whatever I could pick out of that catalog, you know. And then we were also allowed one phone call, and I can still hear my daughter ask me, "When you coming home?" So, but it was quite an experience, you know.